Probably bet on yourself a little bit sooner. No one really knows your risk appetite and or what you're capable of better than you. But on the same token, I would also say be nice to yourself.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Drew Pearson. You are listening to the Pearson Perspective. This is a deep dive into the stories and mindsets of successful business operators and investors. Let's go have some fun. All right, I've got my good buddy here, Zach Quick. We've gotten to be buddies through Twitter of all things. And Zach's really he's grown to be a really great friend, mentor, advisor, kind of all of the above. I'm very honored and humbled to count Zach as a buddy of mine. Zach, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Drew, and feelings are mutual for all that you said. I don't know that mentor or advisor is deserved when I think we're pretty equal in that realm. But enjoyed this and happy to be here.
Great, man. Well, Zach, like so many in real estate and self-storage, you have a very unique entry point into the business. It's not like your family was in self-storage. It's not like you went and got a self-storage degree from college. Tell us kind of how you ended up here.
Yeah, I guess to go way back in college, I was just like a normal business major. Didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I always kind of knew that I wanted to own something, do my own thing at some point. And so, got a regular W-2 job out of school, was middle management, so to speak, for a retailer, but started kind of researching everything, stocks, rental homes, etc., and how bought our first kind of house hack, so to speak, in like 2 or 3 years out of college, and then a true rental only year after that. And so kind of did the residential, anything from a single family home that we fixed up to rent up to we had like a small 12 unit apartment complex. And then honestly felt stuck. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next. Kind of felt broke. We had some limiting beliefs in there too. And then was literally on a family vacation, looked out my window, saw these bright blue self-storage doors, and literally felt like God was like, hey, why don't you look into this? I never had before. You drive by storage units all the time. And that was probably 2017. Did research for a full year, and then we were planning on selling that 12-unit apartment. And so we sold that, and then 1031'd into our first storage facility in 18. And we've been guns blazing since. Sold all the residential and been nothing but storage ever since. So it's I feel like it's a good fit for me and my strengths.
I mean, that's awesome. What a cool story. So I've got a couple of questions I want to chat with you about. The first is, you mentioned you always wanted to kind of do your own thing. Do you think, are you born with that, or is that something you learn over time? Is the whole like nature versus nurture question? Where do you think that came from for you personally?
It's a good question. I don't know that I have a great answer. I I think I don't know. Probably since high school, I probably realized I don't love being told what to do, just in general. So I think there's there's some of that, but there really isn't like a giant entrepreneurial bug in my family in any way. Both my parents, worked at the same place for a really long time, so maybe there's that. I don't know. Eldest child wants to do the opposite of what the parents do. So I think a little bit of both, but for as long as I can remember, I've always had somewhat of an interest in charting my own path, so to speak. And real estate is often kind of I'm not terribly smart, but it's often one of the easiest things to kind of understand, to at least get your foot in the door. So,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think another really interesting thing that you mentioned was, okay, You saw a self storage business in 17. You did research. There's a lot of people who can do research. There's a lot of people who can get the idea. Self storage isn't overly complicated. It's recession resistant. There's lots of customers. You can raise rents, yada yada. But you took the most important step, which was actually taking action. Um, and I think that's such an important skill for entrepreneurs and for young folks. Can you walk us through that, or was it kind of easy because you'd already bought a residential before? How do you think about that?
Um, I don't. I think I felt like I had a higher potential bandwidth after researching storage. That the opportunities were a little bit higher. Some of the like direct management abilities could probably have more leverage. And on the other, I mean, in terms of residential, like I'm not handy. I really, and I'm simplifying, but a lot of it's like, fix it up nice, get people in there, and hope it's not screwed up when they move out, in a year or
Yeah,
two. And so to me, that felt a little bit more of a, um, I don't know, hope and pray strategy as opposed to like I actually felt like I had a little bit more, I don't know, control, frankly, with storage. Now, you know, that there's ups and downs with it, and I actually think storage is more risky, so to speak, than actual residential, just renting out, rental real estate. Um, but I think you're able to affect the bottom line a little bit faster and more directly with storage, and so it helped also like um, my wife and I bought the first one just ourselves. We were gonna kind of put our neck out there um, and try. And I don't know if it didn't work, and especially from the kind of property that we were hoping to find or buy. Um, we'd like to think that we could manage it just as well as the previous guy. At least we were pretty darn sure we could manage it just as well as him. So worst case scenario, it just kind of muddles along, and we either sell it down the road. Um, so I don't know. I think that enough research can only do you so well, and you learn more in the first like 2 months of actually doing something than you could the whole year that we researched it. So
amen. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that first storage deal. You've sold your apartments. You 1031 into this deal. And for those who don't know, a 1031 is kind of a tax free exchange. We take our proceeds. We agree to buy a larger property of similar kind that cash flows, or we can't go buy vacant land or some other asset, but similar kind. And so take us into that. So okay, we buy this. Now we're into the deep end.
yeah, we I basically that in that year of research, I kind of started making my own. Basically a spreadsheet of owners within a call it 3-4 hour radius of potential properties that I thought had upside. Whether that was no website, room for expansion, looks like they were always full. Um, so got a call, met with a guy. Even on top, he said I actually preferred owner finance. He owned a successful business on the side, and this was the side. The successful business was what was really making his money and was taking up his time. So he was willing to finance it for a few years. There was room for expansion. He had a website, but you couldn't do anything with it. It was really just a website that had a phone number on it. And so and it was in a nice area, good location, and so we felt like just felt like our room for error was pretty good, and that there was people up the road that were charging more than he was, and they were getting it. Um, you know, there were customer service things that he really wasn't doing that great. He was basically telling people to leave a voicemail, and then he would call them back when he could. And so, a lot of the things that was just kind of felt felt like easy things that we knew that we could do, and so went down, met with him, walked the property, shook hands, and closed probably, I don't know, 60, 70 days later, um, and executed the exchange. And honestly, it was one of those that, um, uh, in hindsight, the initial purchase probably was skinnier than I anticipated, just in terms of us. kind of redeploying some of the money into like upkeep and fixing the gravel better, repairing some doors, etc. But on the flip side, after a year, we jumped the revenue a fair bit, and we went back to him and said, "Hey, you always said that this extra acre that came with it would be a great place to expand. You just didn't have the time. We've done this, this, this. We paid you like we said we would. Would you want to finance the construction?" And he said, "Yeah, no problem. I could do that." And so basically, he paid for us to expand the facility. Nothing extra out of pocket other than interest paid on whatever we agreed to. But
Wow.
yeah, so it was kind of one of those that couldn't have asked for a better first one. But you don't really get that chance unless you jump in, and then you also have to build rapport and then do what you say you're going to do too. Because if we'd just closed and then kind of been oh ho hum about how we were doing it, then I think he might have been less likely to be like, why don't you just refinance me out? But he was more than willing to do it, and basically from the time we broke ground to construction, we've refinanced him out of that, about out of all of it, I guess, probably 9 months later. Um, and so yeah, it was a great first project to really cut our teeth on a lot of different stuff.
Man, that is so cool. I want to talk about rapport and trust. And as I have continued to grow my business, I have realized that's the business that I'm in, is really the trust business. How do you think about trust, or do you take any active steps to build trust, whether that's lenders, vendors, partners, anybody?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean, you're saying like it's the lifeblood, frankly, especially when times aren't, when everything's rocking and rolling, when everything is perfect, like I don't know, you don't have to like give it or get it as often. But one of the things that I've been thinking about on that front too is employees. Especially as you're onboarding, training, or you're rolling out something new, is um, you know, do they trust you? And that's easy to say, like, well, yeah, of course they trust me. Like their paycheck shows up on time. Why wouldn't they? But I do think that if you're constantly changing things, or you're constantly rolling out new things, um, then there has to be at least some form of trust bank, right? With your
Mm.
employees that they need to say like, okay, well, like last time Zach thought about this or tried to get us to do that. He was open about it. He solicited feedback. He took the feedback, and he even adopted some of the things that like I threw out there that did or didn't work right. Um, and so yeah, I mean, it sounds simple, but doing what you say you're going to do. But I think especially with parties where either you're the one more or less in control, it's even more important to make sure that they trust you, because they're the one that are hopefully out there executing what you're hoping for. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a great answer, but it's definitely something that I've been thinking about from that angle for sure.
No, that's a great answer, and it's for maybe you don't struggle with this, but I'm kind of more that visionary, and let's just kind of like bigger, faster, stronger, and um, consistency, and making sure we're thinking through these new initiatives is really important.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely think I'm that as well. But my W-2 life, it was a lot more of operating, so to speak, and
Hmm.
so that kind of helped me to try to remember that, even if it was stuff I didn't think that I was good at or frankly didn't like doing. But um, you know, you don't get very far if you're just like literally dragging people, as opposed to you know soliciting feedback and getting them to join you where you want them to be and where they feel like they can make an impact too.
This show is brought to you by Pearson Partners, helping families create wealth through self storage. Self storage provides capital preservation, monthly income, and can lower your taxes. We have a team with over 60 years of self storage experience, and we can help you. To find out more, go to our website, Pearson Partners PE, sign up for our newsletter, or listen to other of our podcasts. It's important for me that you understand how we think and view the world, and this is a great place to start. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, this is real leadership stuff you're talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah. Then doesn't mean I'm good at it or an expert by any means,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay, so we've bought our first storage facility. Maybe you think of yourself as a self storage guy, maybe not quite yet, but as it turns out, your timing was just about impeccable. You know, you kind of get in at the start of this industry starting to turn over. Interest rates haven't started to fall yet, but they're going to in the coming years. Walk us through, not deal by deal, but kind of your growth. How did it go from 18 until present?
Yeah. So we basically operated just that facility and kind of sold off the rest of the residential stuff for basically about probably the first 10 months of ownership of that deal, and then I don't know, it kind of was working, for lack of better words. Our thesis was kind of getting proved out, and so um, really started to do more soliciting to owners of trying to, hey, are you interested in selling? And um, honestly, 19, 20, and 21 were extremely busy. We I'll just I don't remember exactly how many, but we're at about, I don't know, 600,000 square feet.
Wow.
Um, and we've bought and sold another probably one, two, three, four, six in between there.
Wow.
And so a lot of those smaller ones were intentional. We're going to buy for this. I'm pretty sure we can get it to X, and then we're going to sell and roll it into the larger ones. But you're 100% right that fortunate on timing. In some ways, the sector getting more popular was a good thing because it allowed for more buyers, more banks to want to get into the fold. But a lot of just like pounding the pavement, calling owners, stopping by, talking to owners. One thing that I always underappreciate is once you're in a market, how much more likely you are if you really try to buy a neighbor, or at least one down the road, because you're much more legitimate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but another thing that obviously helped us is, by solidifying that, when we did all of our residential, it was all just my wife and I's money. Um, Commercial real estate is obviously very expensive, and you're going to run out of your own money at some point. And so we had a handful of people that were, you know, trusted us, knew us, and were willing to kind of joint venture or syndicate, however you wanted to look at it, to join us on some projects when it made sense to take partners. And um, so so that obviously helped kind of keep the ball rolling, so to speak. But yeah, just some really good timing that um, in a lot of ways wouldn't happen unless you really have your ear to the ground. A lot of the timing that you're always looking, and that you're especially if it's a project that you're like pretty sure you're not going to hold forever, that you're uh, you know can reasonably know what it can buy or sell for too. So
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, and then within that, getting our operations a little bit tighter. We hired an operations manager end of last year, and she's been great. Kind of frees me up on some of the day to day stuff. So all of our direct employees, or employees that are like talking to customers and on site and whatnot, report to her and allow me to be a little bit more acquisitions focused, bank focused, a little bit more big picture focused. So
Beautiful. And so let's talk about operations. I mean, do y'all have a employee handbook, video library? How do you keep all your standard operating procedures and know that, hey, we're on track here?
yep. And to be honest with you, documenting stuff is not something that I particularly love or am great at. But yes, and again, she's been a big push in doing that. But yeah, Notion is kind of where we let all of our stuff sit, whether that's anything from bank login, specific vendors that we use, employee handbook, paid time off policy, where we run our payroll, basically anything that we feel like um, needs to be documented in some way, shape, or form that will help our employees just do their job better. So we try and document that. We use a lot of Loom. That is, kind of some short form video that's probably easier to document certain things. And, um, you know, we're recording all the calls just to kind of help from a customer service standpoint.
Yep.
Um, and so, really, anything that is kind of repetitive, we're trying to document and make it as easy as possible, frankly, on the people that are closest to the customers, so that we can free up more time to sell and or make make the properties better for potential customers. So yeah, evolving process always.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're doing a lot of similar things. And, I kind of think about it as, the 80/20 rule. We want to kind of document 80% of those standard things. And that kind of acts as our guardrails. And, it kind of frees up our mental bandwidth to really focus on the 20% where we can be creative or make a small exception for a customer, depending on the situation, what have you. Um, I think that
Yeah,
helps everybody. I think
yeah.
people want to know where's the bar? Where do we
Yeah.
need to be? What are the expectations? Because if we get the right people in the right seats, they deserve to know that they're doing a great job, and we need to let them know that.
Well, and I think too, a big thing that we try and do, and myself and also my operations manager, is like try not to answer, and I'm not great at this, but try not to actually answer the question, but like ask them what they think they should do or what they think I should answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because truthfully, like we want people that are like sitting in the seat that are, and they're never going to like act 100% like owners, because they don't have as much at stake. But like this is your facility. Like, what do you think is best? Like, this customer better than anybody. Like, I'm going to trust your judgment better than my own if you're just like telling me, for the first time, anything I've ever heard about this person or this unit
Mm-hmm.
or anything at that level. So really trying to empower them um, to literally do what they think is best. And if it's not, like, we're probably going to get a second shot at something very similar pretty soon. Like, a lot of this stuff happens frequently. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, that's great. And I'm working really to empower people to say, hey, listen, you're not going to break the system. If you make a mistake, we're going to talk about it and we can course correct. But to your point, we're going to have another shot at this customer or a customer here very soon.
yeah, and we're lucky that, truthfully, storage is a very forgiving business. And so, I mean, there's very rarely something that will like that an employee can do or not do, short of like literally running over a building,
Yeah,
that can't be fixed pretty easily. So
that's interesting. Okay, so you've gone on a nice run here. You've bought in more than a handful of facilities. Um, in 2022, the Fed decided that the party had lasted long enough. Inflation has gone long enough, and we're going to start raising rates. I think I've seen my interest rate almost double here from the end of 21 till the end of 22. Um, what's next for Zach? I mean, that kind of puts a clamp on old pricing.
yeah, so it's funny, and I hired that operations manager at the end of 21 in hopes that to free myself up. And last week, this is the first week of October that we're talking. Last week, we closed our first and only acquisition so far of 22. So doesn't always go as planned, but yeah, I mean, and even the one last week, was seller financed at a 5.25 rate. So, which you'll do those all day. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think expectations are way apart, and even my own. If I were going to consider an offer for something, I'm not going to take something that works at a 7% interest rate, right?
Right.
And so I think it's probably a good, I don't know, 6, 9, 12, maybe even more months before um, that's more, everyone's a little bit more realistic. But frankly, who knows what even, um, you know, the Fed could decide to lower interest rates again here in 6 months. None of us have any idea. So um, I'm going to continue to try and follow up with the same owners. The reality is, life still happens.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it the more strategic sellers are probably just going to wait longer. If you're not in any kind of financial pinch or life pinch, then you're just going to keep operating, right?
Yep.
But you know, uh, spouse gets sick, kids need to go to college, kids moved away, I want to move away. That stuff's still going to happen, and so still would like to be there for the first or second call, but um, somewhat of the same feather of what you're doing is a little bit is like I'm definitely more open to I'll call it conversion opportunities. I'm starting to look a little bit more serious into flex, just to be because I think there's a little bit more opportunity outside of um, not that it's not sexy in itself or hot, but it's not as hot as storage, and I think part of that's just because um, no one knows what to call it. It's less consolidated, frankly, and management's a
Hmm.
little bit more difficult than storage. I shouldn't say difficult, different than storage is probably a better way to put it.
And you're referring
Um,
to flex industrial space
yeah,
right now?
right, yeah. So I hardly know anything about it, truthfully, but um, I'm starting to dabble a little bit. But honestly, um, I don't know. I don't know what else to do other than to try and continue to keep doing what I've been doing with storage, and that's um, keep pounding the pavement. But I think my expectations are probably a little bit lower on number of property. Well, obviously this year being a good example, but
Yeah.
it's a good reminder to me too. Like once you're kind of decently established, a couple good deals a year is great. Like, and I'm not out here trying to become the largest storage company in the world. Um, so if I can snag one or two good deals a year, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, try and become the best uh, operating company that we can be too. So, yeah, we'll see if the shiny object syndrome goes anywhere else, but I'm going to try and keep it on track.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I mean, you've kind of crossed the chasm where now you have a sustainable business that does not require every second of your time. You have processes, procedures, and people in place to serve customers at a profit, and you can be strategic now. I mean, that's where we're all trying to get. You know.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that, and not pull my own hair out because when you're like you or I are, you get bored easily, or
Yep.
you put a lot of pressure on yourself that probably isn't fair. So yeah, just kind of remembering all of those things.
Yeah. Well, before we got on this, I was telling you a little bit about kind of our um, sales funnel that I'm working on. You know, I'm working to set up a monthly email to brokers in select markets where we want to be, letting them know that, hey, we're looking for conversion projects, this size, this square footage, yada, yada. Um, I'm hoping to kind of include a video of myself saying, hey, I understand what it's like to be a broker. I want to be your client. On top of that, we want to pay you a percentage point above and beyond your commission as a thank you. You know, would you have any other advice for guys like myself, or how do we continue to build deal flow if that's important?
No, I think you're onto something that's really wise, and especially you know brokers are the lifeblood. And honestly, you've been a good reminder to me, and obviously your brokerage background's a little bit different than um, my non-brokerage background in that I've all my stuff's been direct to owner, off market, etc. But you know, it's a good it's a good reminder to me that honestly, who cares where the deal comes from? If like the deal
Hmm.
works, then the deal works. And so I think setting up something that's as automated as possible, but also remembering that, um, frankly, the more at bats that you can get with with sellers of real estate, the more likely you are to like land some successes. And I
Yeah.
literally don't, I don't mean like 1 in 1,000, like throw out some crazy lowball offers. That's not sustainable. But really understanding, you know, how do you operate? What sets you apart from the average Joe? What doesn't? What's down your wheelhouse that you know within like 20 minutes whether it's going to work for you or not? And I think having like a tight message to brokers, like what you're talking about, especially if you are specific in your markets as opposed to, you know, I don't know, 40 out of 50 states and,
Right.
whatever. Like that works fine when you're a REIT or you have a lot of, just natural reach and a lot of money, that you can throw at acquisition teams a little bit more loosely. And so I think whatever is decided, um, try and automate it and make it as repetitive as possible, and don't get hung up if it doesn't work for the first couple of months because it probably won't.
Yeah. Yeah. My thought is to try to give this a year and see if we can't get 500 or 600 people on the list consistently. And um, it's in theory it should work. Where
Yeah,
if we can build trust, incentivize brokers, be specific on what we want, and stay in front of them consistently, something should shake out of the hopper.
yeah, absolutely. And again, like that's like 90% of it is being top of mind and then doing what you say you're going to do. Like if they actually give you a good opportunity, be honest with them about why it works or doesn't work, and then perform if you say you're going to perform.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got kind of switching gears a little bit to conversions. I'm doing 2 conversion projects here. We're closing in a month, and so I look forward to kind of keeping you up to breast on how
Yeah,
all that goes. But essentially, we're buying 2 vacant furniture stores, dropping in Janus International climate control kits, installing them, doing the Janus no key Bluetooth doors. Um, have you done much with conversions? How do you think about conversions and developments as we move forward here?
yeah, no conversions. We've expanded a couple sites that are just drive up, and we're getting ready to, well, hopefully get approved here to do another expansion, just single story drive up. It's definitely something that, there's two or three, I'll call it commercial listing areas here that like I monitor daily, and I'm looking for, call it big space that's 40,000 square feet and up,
Hmm.
hoping for, um, something that we can do exactly what you're talking about. And so I think that, it seems to me like, material costs are somewhat coming back down to earth. And so, especially while there's this chasm of like what people think, existing sites are worth, um, that replacement cost, is probably coming back down. I'm not saying all the way back to like 2019 levels, but probably closer.
Hmm.
That I think being creative in that form or fashion is a great avenue to look at. And you and I have talked about this, that, and hopefully I word this correctly, that even if we see a softening in the economy right now, just in terms of like storage demand, right? Let's just assume
Hmm.
we're going to. I'm already seeing it in some of my properties. So, um, that, maybe you don't fill up in 2 years like you would have before, but if you're bringing online better product, and especially if it's better product in a better location, over the longer term, let's just assume that the place isn't overly flooded with storage. Um, you're naturally going to have the better. You're going to fill up fine over time. You're going to have your way with rates, and you're going to have a nicer, newer product. and I'm talking specifically more with conversions here because oftentimes it's in a great spot, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And so I think it's a great avenue to do, and I'm definitely looking, but nothing's quite hit the strike zone yet. So, yeah, I'm hopefully I wouldn't mind coming down and checking out your project here over the next coming months. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes.
Cool. Would love to have you down. Kind of before we start moving to wrap up here, one of the one of the biggest weaknesses in my business model, just to be perfectly frank and honest, is kind of having 5 or 6 criteria where if a potential site meets these, we know it's going to work. Um, and this is really for developments or conversions. We do look at supply and demand or the number of square feet in the market in a 3 mile trade area. But do you have metrics in your mind? Is it a gut feel, or can you just how do you know like okay, boom, we know this new project's going to fill up and we feel great about it?
I think the biggest thing, like supply and demand is fine. I'll look at it, but I'm probably more concerned. I'm more concerned is anyone else coming online that I don't know about within, call it a 3 mile radius, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on where we're at. And then how I get competitor obsessed. Like, who am I actually going to be competing with on a day to day basis at this new site? Um,
Hmm.
are they full? Do they answer the phone? Can I rent online? So let's assume I'm like, you know, I'm better, or let's assume like I'm just as good of an operator. Like, what will my rates actually be, or is there actually a spread there? Um, have they been full for a long time? Do they answer on the weekends? I, that to me is more of and again, obviously, this somewhat assumes like this area is growing. Doesn't have to be gangbusters, but at least some signs of positive growth. And it's a low crime area, right? I
Hmm.
don't, I don't need 6 figure average incomes, but crime's kind of a no go. But I think that to me, I don't know how to say it other than I get competitor obsessed. Like, and be honest with yourself. Like, if one of those is extra space, like don't don't pretend like you're gonna like truly be as good as they are.
Right.
Like maybe 80% is good. I don't know. Maybe like sometimes
Yeah.
it just depends on how good the person sitting in the desk is, right? But if your closest competitors always full, they don't answer on the weekends. Like you can click and rent on their site, but it just says waiting list all the time. Um,
You feel
there's
pretty good about that.
it's hard to not feel pretty decent about. That there's some upside. Obviously, you're not going to know how much until you get in there and operate, but you can forecast that. Um, you know, I can at least do that, and that's usually
Yep.
how I get my gut check.
Yep. Yeah, and I think for me, it always comes back to price. I mean, what's kind of our all-in price, and can we get out of this if things don't go quite as rosy as we hope?
Right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, basis matters, and I think that I don't. It'll be interesting to see, like, especially as some of these, like, call it, I don't know, if you locked in a super low rate, but you paid, $100 a foot in a market that really doesn't support $100 a foot rates, and you got to reset your loan here in a couple of years, and maybe we're not at that. I don't know. I'm sure there'll be. Uh, Again, storage is very forgiving, so I don't think anyone's going to be. We're definitely not going to see a bunch of like belly up storage by any means, but I do
Yeah.
think that there'll be a fair share of extend and pretend um, stuff that can happen. Just kind of when we were, for lack of better words, on fire the last couple of years with rates and prices.
Right.
So
Right. Right. Well, man, this has been a lot of fun to kind of bring it on home. I like to ask 2 more final questions. The first one is I know you're a reader. Do you have any books that have either kind of affected your mindset, the way you think, or maybe you've given to other friends and family?
Um, uh, this is like opposite of me because I'm really not. I'm far from like a finance or accounting nerd, but profit first um, was actually really, really, really helpful for me to like run my business better. Mike McCallowitz, spell check me on that. It's
Okay.
somewhere. I got
I've
it
got it.
somewhere
Yep.
around
I got it
here
right
too.
here. Mike,
Um,
Mike McCallowitz.
yeah, there we go. And it's a super simple read, and it's honestly pretty easy, applicable stuff. But I think if you just follow at least half of it, it'll help you run your business a lot better and not be making kind of oh, for lack of better words, bank account decisions. Like you log in, is there enough in there? Okay, I'm going to do this
Yep.
because you'll find that that can lead you astray pretty quick. So that one, if you've already started. Um, I don't know. I've been trying to in my free time do a little bit of non-business reading, and you and I talked about the. I'm about to start Sacred Pace, and then I've been reading the Relentless. What's it called? Relentless Pursuit of.
Elimination of hurry.
Yes, yeah. You got it.
Yes.
Which has been good so far, and been jarring to myself as a good reminder of how bad I am at it. So, um, yeah,
That's a great book. That for me really changed a lot of my mindset and habits. And um, ironically, I think we can all get a lot more productive by doing less,
yeah,
by focusing on those real levers to pull and those real relationships. And it starts with your faith and then kind of moves from your family and then to your business.
yep, yep. I agree.
Well, great, man. So to kind of bring it on home here, if Zach could go back and give himself any advice, 10 or 15 years ago, what do you think you'd say to yourself?
Hmm. I would say probably bet on yourself a little bit sooner. No one really knows your risk appetite and or what you're capable of better than you. But on the same token, I would also say be nice to yourself. I think that it's always a double-edged sword. Super driven people are also super hard on themselves.
Hmm.
But I think just kind of realizing that like and I struggle with this to this day. Like you're more than like Zach the self storage guy, right? Um,
Sure.
or 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 if I fall short on a projection or a property doesn't work out quite as well as I hoped, then you know I don't. That doesn't mess with your identity. That doesn't mess with your relationship with God or your family, etc. So I think both. If that's easier said than done, but I think bet on yourself, go bigger if you can, and then but also be kind to yourself.
Yeah. I love it, man. That's sound advice.
Thank you.
Well, buddy, thanks for coming on today. I'd love to show you those new projects and hopefully we can get together soon.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
All right, man. See ya. I would really appreciate it if you'd leave us a review on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you're listening or watching to this show. Thanks so much for joining us on this audio adventure. Let's go have some fun.